What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York, and on the phone we got Nita Strauss. Thank you for your call today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. How are you doing?
Doing all right for living in the middle of Manhattan during this crazy time.
Ooh, yikes.
Yeah. How are you doing under quarantine? It's a great time for songwriting, though. Have you been keeping busy during this time?
It really is. Yeah, I feel like I've actually been busier than I've ever been in my life during quarantine, which is amazing. I feel really lucky. We've had great weather here in LA, so that's been really nice too. I've talked to some people in New York. I know you guys are kind of roughing it, right?
Yeah, doing the best we can. This is the hardcore capital of the world. It won't take us down.
There you go. But yeah, I've been working on my next record. The great thing about having all the tech now is you can write and record anywhere. So I'm recording my next record at home. I'm super active on my social media, doing all kinds of live streams and podcasts and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, releasing my instruments, guitar course, my online guitar course, which has been consuming most of my time throughout this whole situation.
Yeah, that's really cool that you're still able to interact with your fans and still, bring music to the people and even teach them a thing or two during this time. I think it's keeping a lot of people busy and taking their mind off of the situation.
Well, that's actually why we released the course now. I actually finished filming my instructional course last year in 2019, but we've just had so much going on and everything was always so busy that I never had the time to edit it and get it all together. So the plan was always to release this in the fall. And then when all the touring got canceled and everybody was kind of, you saw this sort of mass panic on social media of everyone going, I'm stuck in my house, I don't really know what to do. I thought we better rush and get this thing out so people have something to occupy their time during this time at home. And as most of you guys know, music is the best therapy, and playing music is even better therapy than listening to it.
Yeah, of course. Working on the new music now, are you kind of like doing a similar thing to what we heard on Controlled Chaos back in 2018, or is this going to be like something completely different, like a side of Nita Strauss that we never heard before?
I wouldn't say it's going to be vastly different. It's still going to sound like my style. It's still going to be an instrumental shred record. I put a lot of different facets of my personality, of which there are many, on Controlled Chaos. So you'll see the more aggressive side still. You'll see the lighter side and happier side and the more peaceful side. I just finished one of the ballads for this record last week, and I'm immensely proud of how it came out. So there will definitely be a wide spectrum of different emotions going on. And the biggest change, I guess, will be is I am going to have a guest singer or two on a couple songs on this one. So that would be the main difference between the two records.
That's really cool. And, I love asking guitar players this because, it's one thing to, write an instrumental song that's engaging, but when you are writing music that accommodates to a singer, is it almost kind of like a completely separate guitar process in a way?
I wouldn't say it's completely separate for me because I try to write a lot of my instrumental stuff as if it could be written for a singer. It still has a verse, a pre-chorus, and a chorus. It still has to have a melody sit on top of it. So I find the process pretty similar, but when writing for a singer, I think you definitely want to be accommodating of who you're writing for. You want to think about the key, what's most comfortable for their vocal range, what might suit that singer's tone the best. Like, are they a power singer? Are they a growler, screamer? Whatever kind of fits that singer's personality and bring the best out of them as well.
Yeah, I'd imagine like you have to adjust your tuning depending whether you're doing your solo stuff or you're playing along with Alice Cooper or anything like that, right? Do you adjust the tuning in a way?
Absolutely, yeah, every time. So my solo record, actually, when I did Controlled Chaos, I wrote the majority of that on tour with Alice, and I was just using whatever guitar I had in my dressing room at the time. So if you listen to Controlled Chaos, there were like 4 different tunings on that record, and it just was because that's what I had with me at the time. So now it's a bit more consistent, because it was a pain to go on tour. I was like, okay, I better consolidate tunings. We ended up consolidating everything into 2 tunings for that tour, but it was just kind of a pain. So I think we'll be a little more consistent on this upcoming record.
Okay. When you are writing soloing, because I know you do have like a background in theory, like are you even thinking about that when you are writing solo? Like, what scale and what mode you're working off of, or do you tend to like to improvise until something falls into place?
very rarely do I think about it. The only time I really refer to the theory, and actually I don't have a background in theory. I taught it to myself several years ago because I felt like I needed to know it. But I was a totally self-taught guitar player, so I didn't know any of this stuff. And again, that's kind of why I created this course, because I wanted a way to make guitar theory and music theory accessible for non-music school attendees. Because I felt like there wasn't really anything accessible for people like myself who are just kind of muddling around on the internet to learn theory in an easy way. So I don't really refer to it unless I feel like I need to break out of the box. I need to go somewhere that my mind isn't automatically taking me, and then I go, okay, I'm in A, this is the corresponding, Phrygian scale, let's go there and see if it brings out some different patterns. And so that's the only time I really buckle down and refer to the theory.
Yeah, I was interviewing Tardia, not Tarja, as a lot of people say, but she has a background in total, she studied opera and classical music, to the whole nine.
She's amazing.
And she said sometimes, it could almost enslave you in a way. It could almost dictate you. So, and I'd imagine that there's a lot of theory elitists who will look at music theory and say that it's not metal at all. Metal just breaks all the rules.
I'm sure, yeah. But, I remember when I was first learning how to play guitar, I was watching an instructional DVD of Marty Friedman. It was called Exotic Metal Scales. And at one point, Marty was explaining this scale, and he's like, this is a scale that I just made up. Maybe it's called something, I'm paraphrasing, but he said maybe it's called something, but this is just, a scale that I put together I think sounds good. And I was talking to a music school friend about it, somebody that went to Berkeley, and they said, well, this is actually, and they named, really, not a common scale. It's actually this. He just didn't know that it's that. And I thought, well, how cool that Marty Friedman, one of the greatest guitar players of all time, is going around and kind of just doing what we do, mucking around with the different notes and saying, I don't know what this is called. I think I made it up. This sounds good.
In order to get inspired to write music, do you find it better when you're alone in isolation, nobody bothering you? Do you need to put yourself in a certain place, or do ideas for the guitar just come when you least expect it?
I've always been the type of person that likes to write alone. I don't play well with others, I think. There are a few people that I enjoy co-writing with, but for the most part, I just like to be on my own and do my own thing. And then, if I'm working with a band, I'll sort of bring a semi-finished product and say, hey, here's my idea, and then we'll make changes together. But I do find that in this isolation where I would normally be extremely creative, it's getting a little harder to be as creative as usual. And I think that's just because of the lack of external stimulus. I'm not going out and not even the point of seeing anybody, but just going out and living your life and going out day to day and seeing things and smelling things and experiencing things. I think that plays more into your creative process than we probably all realize.
Yeah, I've always said that isolation is sometimes the greatest fuel for art in a way, but it can be too much sometimes.
Maybe a little too much isolation.
Yeah, definitely. Let's hope this ends sooner than later. But when you are playing with different artists, whether you're collaborating with somebody like Angel Vivaldi, for example, or you're playing with Alice Cooper, or doing your solo stuff, is it almost a completely separate mind frame, or is there maybe kind of a universal mode that kind of applies to everything?
It's different for different situations. I'm really, really lucky that over the years of playing guitar, I've developed my own style, and the thing that's lucky is that people like that style. So I don't have to usually go to as much of a departure from my own personal style as maybe some other guitar players would, because the people that hire me tend to hire me because they want me to do Nita. They want me to be myself on this. They want that signature kind of sound on the track. So I normally don't have to take myself too far out of my own vibe, my own style. I just go hey, what sounds cool to me here when I'm collaborating with someone. However, I've worked on soundtracks and stuff in the past. I've worked on some video games, and for those kind of situations, it's very much about taking yourself out of what sounds cool to Nita and what delivers this specific sound that the client wants. So that's sort of when you take yourself and your ego out of it and just go, all right, let me deliver this as it was presented to me without, too much of their own stamp on it.
Yeah, and I'd imagine the more people and more clients you work with, whether it's collaborating with another artist or working on a soundtrack, it has to almost teach you new things on how to apply to your own solo work as well, right?
Every single time, without fail. I actually do much less session work now than I used to. Before playing with Alice, a big bulk of how I made my living was doing sessions, and I just don't have the time to do it as much anymore. But each and every time, whether it was like just a guest solo on somebody's song or doing a whole soundtrack or a whole album, it did teach me something every time.
Which is incredible, and I've always said that there's no such thing as a musician who has all the knowledge in the world. So there's maybe you're collaborating with an artist who has something that you never even thought of, and then you bring it to your own arsenal. I call it the riff arsenal.
Love that. Yeah, I think so. I think you're absolutely right. And a lot of it, one thing that I do every single time I do a guest solo or anything at all is, you ask for the normal stuff like the tempo and, whatnot, but I always also ask, what is the song about? Like, what was your inspiration? Like, anything that you can tell me about the origin story of this song. Sometimes you can tell, sometimes you can't tell, especially if there's not lyrics on it yet, if you're just getting the music. I want to know what this story is about and what they're trying to say, so I can think about that when I'm recording. I'm a really emotional guitar player, so when I'm recording something, I want it to tell that same story. If I'm over here thinking about what I'm going to have for lunch later, and they're over here writing about, this devastating turn of events that happened in their life, my soul is not going to mesh with their song. So I need to at least have the frame of reference of where that artist is coming from, so I can paint my part of that picture.
Yeah, when you are asked to work on a soundtrack or something like that, like when you said you've done video games, like do you have to maybe play the video game at first, or maybe even read the plot or the story to even get a better idea?
Oh my god, that would take me. I'm not a gamer, so it would take me 100 years to play the game, and usually the game's not released yet when we do this stuff. But I do always ask about the plot, like that kind of stuff, and sort of like what's happening in the scene. If there's, and you can, with something like that as well, with let's just take video game, for example, I'm not really as much doing my own thing on it. You're given sort of a MIDI guide track, and it's basically like, play this as it is. And those soundtracks, I've worked with the company Blizzard a lot, and those soundtracks are so evocative. Like, you really kind of get what's going on, if there's this urgency, or if it feels like a calm sort of exploratory song or something like that. They're very, very easy to follow, even if you don't have that guide of, hey, the hero is now, your character is now passing through the forest, or something like that.
Yeah, I still don't understand how Koji Kondo, who's the composer for the Zelda games, how he's able to come up with new ideas, 80 years, 40 years now into the franchise.
Yeah, it's wild. And those songs are so iconic, too. I played with a band called Critical Hit several years ago, and that was some of the composers from World of Warcraft and different games, and basically made a rock and orchestral band playing sort of rock covers of classic video game themes. And I was, learning these songs. I recorded the album with them, and we played a couple shows, and these songs are just so iconic. And hearing the way that, the gaming community responds to the Zelda theme song, or, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, or, any of these iconic game themes, the same way that a rock fan would respond to Guns N' Roses playing Paradise City. It's wild.
Yeah, if you do a collaboration with Hans Zimmer, though, that would be incredible. Let's make that happen.
It would be amazing. Actually, one of my very good friends, Tina Glow, who she also played in the band Critical Hit. We played those shows together. She collaborates with Hans a lot, and I love hearing their work together.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And kind of going back to the emotional aspects of your music, like you mentioned that you try to capture an emotion that you were feeling at that time. So you try to capture a moment, pretty much, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you find it, though, maybe the longer that you're working on a song, like the harder it is to kind of maintain that moment in a way?
Not really for me. I can see what you're saying, but I feel like if there's something that's a strong enough emotion in my life that I want to make a song about it, there's only I think 10 songs on my album, so it's 10 moments caught in time, not counting the Queen song, which I obviously didn't write. Yeah. But that's 10 moments in time, or 10 feelings or emotions that I felt strongly enough about to say, this, I need to create an entire audience experience around this. So it hasn't been difficult to put myself back into that mindset to finish a solo or write a bridge or anything like that.
Yeah, I've always said guitar soloing and singing is pretty much the same thing, as it conveys emotion and conveys imagery and conveys a message as well. So,
1,000%.
yeah, and like, you know, does that emotion, like, you know, when you're playing it live and, you know, re-executing it, does it almost kind of put you back into that state of mind as when you first wrote it?
It really depends on the situation. Like, I'm such a performer that a lot of times I'm not really thinking about the song in that moment as much as I'm thinking about the show. You know, so I'm thinking about the audience. I'm thinking about, you know, obviously playing the right notes a little bit, but I'm more thinking about the performance and the experience and connecting with the audience. So, like, there's a song on Control Chaos called "Mary on the Trench," and that's one of the heavier songs on the album. And that, you know, if I put myself in that aggressive headspace, what I was thinking about when I wrote that song, I would just be in a bad mood the whole rest of the show. So I'm more like in that moment just thinking about the audience and the vibe. But if it's a slower song and I'm not as aggressive, sometimes I'll think about it. Or there's sometimes when it just pops into my head that I've actually legitimately cried on stage thinking about different parts of my life or what was going through my mind. Even with Alex, sometimes thinking about the first time I played the song or thinking about something else that's going on in my life, and it just brings out, you know, the notes I'm playing just bring out that emotion. It's important to let yourself emotionally connect to your instrument when you can.
Of course, and I think that shows a lot. You know, it's one thing to be a great technical guitar player, but if you're not putting any feeling into it, it's really not going to be entertaining. I don't care if you could shred, you know, 1,000 notes per measure or something like that. If it doesn't convey a certain emotion, I don't think it's going to resonate with people.
I totally agree. And what's funny is I get criticized for that all the time. I see, you know, every time sometimes I get weak and I click the comment sections of articles or videos, and not everyone, but so there's always people on there that go, "Oh, she's just an emotionless shred machine," and I was like, "What, me?" Okay, I guess I don't know how I could be any more emotional of a guitar player. I guess maybe they don't want to hear so many notes, but I like what I'm doing, so yeah. I'm not going to change it.
Yeah. I've always said, quoting myself, you don't need to be emo to be an emotional player. You bring in a lot of emotion into your music, and I heard that on the album, and I saw when the last time I saw you was in 2018 with Angel Vivaldi at Brooklyn Bazaar, and that
was a fun show.
Yeah, rest in peace to that venue, sadly.
You know, is it gone? No, what a shame.
Yeah, I think they're going to relocate, though. They're going to try to open up in an area where the rent is somewhat affordable.
Well, they should relocate into an area with a better load-in, because that load-in sucks.
Yeah, that was a pain in the butt. I can't tell you how many times I've almost gotten run over by the trailers. They say, yeah, just wait here, your interview will be ready, and then I almost get ran over by, like, so many rigs. Yeah, but I almost got crushed to death under Reed from the Obsess amp, and that was an incredible honor. So
that's totally worth it. Would have been worth death.
Yeah, exactly. And I have two more questions for you, if that's cool. But like, kind of going back to the emotional element, do you almost channel a similar energy into your live presence as you do in the creative process, or is playing live almost a completely separate art than songwriting?
For me, it's a totally separate art. We kind of touched on it a little bit, but for me, being on stage is about your audience and about your show and what you're giving to them that they can't get from the record. So if I'm up there, I might be able to deliver a different show if I was up there thinking about, we'll just take Mary on a Trench for an example, because we've been talking about that. I was thinking about I wrote that song thinking about, Mary on a Trench is the deepest trench in the ocean, the deepest place in the world that we know of, and it's also the place in the world with the most pressure. And I was feeling this crushing amount of pressure to deliver this record. In between, I was on tour with Alice. I had done this super successful Kickstarter, so there was a lot of people waiting for me to deliver it. I was under the deadlines and all this stuff, and I wrote that from like a really aggressive standpoint of like, just leave me the fuck alone, like let me write my stuff, and always being pulled in all these different directions. So if I was on stage thinking about that and how frustrated I was and how angry I was with this whole situation that I wasn't being allowed to create on my own schedule, I'm not angry. I mean, I love doing it. I'm explaining it wrong, but you know what I mean? Just getting this very aggressive headspace. I wouldn't be thinking about the audience that paid money to come there and see the show. And I wouldn't be thinking about, like, making the best show experience. And there's a lot of stuff that goes into a good live performance that the audience might never even realize. Like, something we do with Alice and something we do with my solo band is making sure there's a band member in front of every part of the audience all the time. And we don't choreograph anything. There's not like, okay, you go left and I go right at this, 2 minutes into the second song. But if I see my other guitar player, Johnny, starting to move right, I'll move left just so there's not a big hole on the stage and somebody standing in the front row has nobody to watch.
Yeah.
There's like all these little things of the show that just create a better experience, and that's what I'm focused. Like, I want to make eye contact with as many people as I can. I want to get down low and get in people's face and give them that experience that they're not going to get just sitting at home listening to the record.
And I'm guessing that's where the name Controlled Chaos came from, because you kind of know what you're doing, but you let things happen organically as well? Or am I just overthinking the hell out of everything right now?
No, that's part of it, yeah. Controlled Chaos, the title, basically sort of came from the idea that you can let the chaos in your life overcome you, or you can harness that chaos and make something amazing out of it. And I think every artist goes through that struggle of trying to, let that chaos just like completely make you into a crazy person, or take it and do something productive with it.
Absolutely beautiful. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed this discussion. Is there just anything else that you would like to promote? Like, when could we maybe be expecting the new solo album, or just anything else you would like to shout out?
Yeah, actually, I'm promoting my online instructional guitar course right now. So it's actually kind of fun to talk about something else, because it's what all my interviews have been about lately. But the main thing I'm working on at the moment is the online course that just came out. The website is www.iwanttoplayguitar.com, and it's a whole course that basically takes the learner from picking up the guitar for the very first time all the way through the whole journey and into playing songs and solos and doing some shred stuff. Experienced guitar players can pick it up wherever they'd like. You don't have to start at Module 1. You can jump right into the intermediate section and learn about modes and theory and sweeps and tapping and all that fun stuff. So if anybody would like to check that out, it's going to be 50% off for one more week at iwanttoplayguitar.com. No code needed, just head on over there and start shredding.
Yeah, and from looking at it from Model 1 and Model 2 and Module 3, it's like almost like anybody, any level of guitar player could start from it, right? You don't need to be it's not, you could be a beginner or you could be a shredder. Anybody is welcome for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, obviously there are some elite players that are miles above me that won't have anything to learn from it, but, I would say that a huge percentage of guitar players will get something out of it, because even if you're already a really good guitar player, maybe you've just always wanted to brush up, we're talking about theory and how difficult it is to understand if you don't study music. And I explained it and broke it down really, really thoroughly from a guitar player's perspective. So maybe you just always wanted to get the hang of that, or maybe you've been, a great rhythm and blues guitar player all your life, but you want to learn some shred tricks or whammy bar stuff or anything like that. So I think we really put something in there for just about everybody.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Anita. Everybody, we are here with Nita Strauss. Be sure to check out Rock Guitar Fundamentals, the online teaching program, and new stuff coming very soon. We'll see you next time on Heavy New York.